Hi, I'm Ben Savello. After over 15 years of working with GameMaker, I decided to branch out and learn Unity. One of my main motivators for this was to get some practice with FMOD. I wanted lots of hands-on experience, so I decided to make my own game. Again. I came up with this idea for a fast-paced, strategic arena game called Numbrawler. I made a devlog on TIG Source forums where I shared design notes and progress as I went. I've since put this project on hold, but I managed to put together a working prototype of some of the core gameplay, with dynamic audio implemented in the main mechanics. In this video, I'd like to share what I did with the sound design, and how I put the FMOD events together. At the end, I'll also talk about what I'd like to do next with the audio if I someday pick this project back up. Numbrawler is all about managing hordes of enemies with fast-paced maneuvering and strategic mental math. You defeat enemies by grappling them and throwing them into each other. Each enemy has a numeric rank, and when they collide, both enemies are destroyed, with the difference between their ranks resulting in a new enemy. In order to grapple and throw an enemy, the player must first take down their shields with their blaster. The result of these mechanics is that the player is constantly splitting their attention between the moment-to-moment combat and thinking ahead about how to most efficiently use the enemies on the field. The core of the game revolves around the grapple mechanic. For the audio, I broke this action down into 3 key components: initiation, travel, and throw. The initiation itself is simple, just a quick one-shot to kick off the action. Once the rope latches onto the enemy, the player begins to fly toward it. The player can grapple an enemy from any distance, so the sound for this needed to scale appropriately, for distances both short and long. The FMOD event consists of a main loop with a bit of pitch and volume automation at the startup, and an end parameter, which also has pitch and volume automation, but also triggers a one-shot that signals the end of the travel motion. The end parameter interpolates from 0 to 1 over a fixed period of time. I set up an ending event class in my audio manager, which handles this interpolation automatically, stopping and releasing the event when the transition is done. This way, I could easily design and implement ending transitions like this for any sound. Finally, once the player reaches the enemy's position, they throw the enemy in the direction they just came from. The enemy travels at a fixed speed for a short period and then slows to a stop, bouncing off any walls along the way. The FMOD event consists of a tonal stinger and a looping section, and uses the same end parameter system as the travel sound. It also uses a separate speed parameter, giving finer control over how the sound reacts to different speeds and deceleration rates. When enemies bounce against walls, a short bumper sound plays, with pitch and volume determined by the speed of the collision. This helps further communicate the trajectory and speed of the enemy's travel over time. The effect is especially apparent when an enemy rapidly bounces between walls. The default blaster fires short bursts of laser-like projectiles. These bullets are bright, chunky, and round, so their sounds needed to match these characteristics. Their design consists of 2 main layers: a tonal synth, which gives the body of the sound, and a noise layer with a resonant sweeping filter, which gives the transient. Together, they make a good character, but it lacks punch. So I layered in pitched down mouth pops to add a round and subtle sub. To group these bullet sounds into bursts of 3, I added an EQ module to the signal chain in FMOD and set up a soften parameter, which attenuates the highs and mids. The player controller keeps track of the bullet firing on an internal timer, and when the interval between bullets is short enough, it rolls off those high frequencies. This way, the first bullet in each burst stands out more than the subsequent shots. If the player staggers their shots individually, which isn't really an intended use or necessary for gameplay, but is nonetheless possible, each bullet will have its full frequency range, therefore sounding more independent from the others. The shield sounds have a tonal, glassy quality. They were some of the toughest sounds to design, and honestly, if I do continue with this project, I'll definitely keep toying with them. But I do think they get some things right, namely the way they stick out of the mix with high frequency content, a wide stereo image, and very short attack and decay. The most important information for the player to know on a moment-to-moment basis is which enemies are grappleable and which ones aren't. When an enemy's shield breaks, it changes from non-grappleable to grappleable, and it's important to make sure the player never misses that cue, even in a full mix with hordes of enemies, power-ups, and music. Before I wrap up, I'd like to briefly talk about a few things I'd like to implement if I were to continue working on this project. I mentioned continuing to tinker with the shield sounds, but one feature in particular I'd like to try would be a rising pitch element as an enemy's shield comes close to breaking. This would not only add more variety to the soundscape of the gameplay, but more importantly, it would give the player more information. As it stands, the only way to know how much shield an enemy has left is to watch its shield gauge. If the player could hear this information in the shield damaging sounds, it would increase their ability to make quick gameplay decisions and enhance the satisfaction of taking down the shields of a strong enemy. Another feature I'd like to add would be more dynamic explosions when enemies collide. Right now there's only one sound, and while it has some good motion to it, it's pretty broadband noise and it doesn't tell much of a story. One of the intended features for this game was to reward the player for good strategy and stylish throws, like tricky ricochets or crushing equal high-rank enemies into each other. With special explosions for these kinds of actions, the game could effectively tell a new player, "Hey, that was a great move, you should do that again." This would help a new player learn the intricacies of the emergent gameplay and increase the satisfaction of pulling off good moves. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to check out the Numbrawler devlog, there's a link in the description. I hope you found this interesting, and if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment or reach out on Twitter or by email. Until next time.